Before the heart ever learned how to search, Allah was already nearer than the breath inside your chest. What felt like distance was never absence, it was the heart looking away. What felt like seeking was never a journey forward, it was a forgetting of what was already holding you. This is not a call to strain, to climb, or to become something else. It is a call to return to stillness and notice what never moved. Because the moment the heart stops chasing Allah, it discovers that He was the one carrying it the entire time. The heart was created as presence, not as a seeker. The heart was never created to go looking for Allah as if He were far away. When a person searches, it usually means they believe something is missing. But Allah is never missing. He is never distant. The distance only appears when the heart becomes busy with noise, fear, or constant thinking. Ibn ʿArabī points to something very simple here. The heart does not lose. Allah awareness loses its clarity. When the heart forgets where it comes from, it starts running, asking, chasing, and trying too hard. When this confusion slowly clears, something quiet happens inside. The heart realizes it was never facing the wrong direction. It was always turned toward Allah, even in moments of weakness, even in moments of doubt. The struggle to reach Allah begins to soften. The pressure to constantly prove faith fades. The heart stops moving outward and begins to rest inward. This is where recognition replaces effort. At this stage, faith no longer feels heavy. Prayer does not feel like a task you force yourself to complete. Remembrance no longer feels like something you must keep up with out of fear of forgetting. Instead, forgetting Allah starts to feel strange, like trying to forget your own breathing. The heart notices Him naturally, quietly, without stress. Allah is recognized in stillness, in routine moments, in silence, and even in confusion. This kind of heart does not remember Allah only by repeating words. Words are still there, but they are no longer carrying the entire weight. The heart remembers Allah because it sees that He was never absent to begin with. Just like light does not need to search for the sun once the clouds move away, the heart does not need to search for Allah once awareness clears. What changes is not Allah's presence, but the heart's ability to notice it. When the heart lives this way, faith becomes less about chasing closeness and more about staying awake. The heart is no longer tired from seeking. It becomes calm through recognizing, and in that calm, Allah is not found at the end of a journey. He is recognized as the one who was present the entire time. Witnessing stabilizes when events no longer define Allah. Many hearts feel close to Allah when life is easy, and feel far from Him when life becomes heavy. This happens because the heart quietly starts judging Allah through events. When things go well, the heart feels chosen. When things fall apart, the heart feels forgotten. Ibn ʿArabī explains that this way of seeing is unstable because it ties Allah to change, while Allah is beyond change. Events rise and fall, but Allah does not move with them. When the heart connects Allah to outcomes, faith keeps shaking, peace comes and goes, trust feels fragile. When the heart begins to mature, it slowly learns something deeper. What happens is not proof of Allah's nearness or distance. Ease is not a reward, and hardship is not abandonment. Both are movements within life, not measures of Allah. When the heart truly understands this, it stops panicking when things change. Loss no longer feels like exile. Delay no longer feels like rejection. The heart realizes that Allah was present during ease, during hardship, and during the waiting in between. At this stage, witnessing becomes steady. The heart no longer asks, "Why did this happen to me?" as a way of questioning Allah's care. Instead, it asks, "What is being shown to me through this?" Life turns into a teacher rather than a threat. The heart learns to see Allah beneath every situation, not inside only the pleasant ones. Even pain carries meaning without becoming evidence against Allah. This does not make the heart cold or emotionless. It still feels sadness, joy, disappointment, and hope. But these feelings no longer control faith. The heart does not collapse when things break. It does not become arrogant when things work out. It stays grounded because it knows Allah is not contained in outcomes. Allah is the one witnessing the outcome with you. When the heart reaches this place, faith stops being reactive. Trust is no longer rebuilt after every test because it was never destroyed. The heart understands that events pass, but Allah remains. And once the heart sees this clearly, it no longer looks at life asking where Allah is. It looks at Allah and understands life through Him. The heart becomes unbreakable when ownership dies. The heart becomes fragile when it believes things belong to it. Not just people or possessions, but plans, roles, emotions, and even spiritual states. The moment the heart quietly says, "This is mine," fear enters. Fear of loss, fear of change, fear of being emptied. Ibn ʿArabī teaches that this sense of ownership is one of the deepest sources of pain, because it places the heart in a position it was never meant to hold. The heart was not created to own. It was created to receive. When the heart believes it owns something, loss feels violent, change feels like injustice, delay feels like punishment. But when ownership begins to loosen, the heart starts to see reality more clearly. It realizes that nothing truly belonged to it, not the people it loved, not the stability it enjoyed, not even the version of itself it grew attached to. Everything was entrusted, not owned. And what is entrusted can be returned without breaking the one who held it. As this understanding settles, something strong forms inside the heart. It stops gripping life so tightly. It loves without fear, gives without disappearing, and trusts without demanding guarantees. Loss may still hurt, but it no longer destroys. When something leaves, the heart does not collapse into bitterness or resentment. It understands that Allah did not take something away as a punishment. He simply ended a trust that had already served its purpose. This kind of heart becomes unbreakable, not because nothing leaves it, but because nothing defines it. Its peace is no longer built on having, holding, or keeping. It is built on knowing that Allah remains when everything else changes. When ownership dies, dependence shifts. The heart stops leaning on what can be removed and begins resting in the one who cannot be lost. At this level, even spiritual pride fades. The heart no longer claims its patience, its faith, or its progress. It knows that these two are gifts, not achievements. This keeps the heart soft without making it weak. It walks through life with open hands instead of clenched fists. And because it owns nothing, it cannot be shattered by loss. What remains is a heart that is free, steady, and deeply rooted in Allah. The heart remains with Allah when it holds contradiction without fear. Many hearts become confused when life sends mixed signals. One moment they feel close to Allah, the next moment they feel distant. One moment they feel peace, the next moment they feel pain. The heart starts to panic because it believes something is wrong. It assumes that faith should feel smooth, clear, and consistent. Ibn ʿArabī explains that this expectation itself creates instability. Reality was never meant to be one-sided. Allah reveals Himself through opposites, not through comfort alone. When the heart cannot hold contradiction, it rushes to escape discomfort. It wants quick answers, emotional relief, or clear labels. But a heart that is learning to remain with Allah does something different. It stays present even when two opposite feelings exist at the same time. It allows joy and grief to sit together. It allows hope and uncertainty to coexist. This does not weaken the heart, it deepens it. As the heart matures, it learns that closeness to Allah does not mean the absence of struggle. Sometimes nearness feels like warmth. Other times it feels like pressure. Both are forms of care. Expansion teaches gratitude. Contraction teaches sincerity. The heart that understands this no longer accuses itself when faith feels tight or heavy. It does not assume distance just because ease disappears. This kind of heart stops fearing inattention. It does not rush to resolve every question or explain every feeling. It trusts that meaning unfolds over time. Silence becomes acceptable. Waiting becomes bearable. The heart learns that Allah is not only known in clarity, but also in confusion that humbles and refines. When contradiction no longer threatens faith, the heart becomes steady. It does not swing wildly with emotions or circumstances. It remains anchored even when the inner world feels complex. The heart understands that Allah is present in both relief and restraint, and because of this, it stays with Allah not only when life makes sense, but especially when it does not. The heart loses Allah when it clings to how closeness once felt. Many hearts believe closeness to Allah should always feel a certain way. They remember a time when prayer felt sweet, when tears came easily, when faith felt alive and warm. Without realizing it, the heart begins chasing that feeling. Ibn ʿArabī warns that this is one of the quietest ways the heart loses balance. The heart is no longer present with Allah as He is now. It is attached to how Allah once felt. When the heart clings to past sweetness, present dryness starts to feel like failure. Silence feels like rejection. The heart begins to doubt itself and its faith, not because Allah is distant, but because the feeling has changed. This creates unnecessary suffering. The heart starts measuring closeness by emotion instead of truth. It forgets that feelings rise and fall, but Allah does not move with them. As the heart matures, it slowly learns that closeness is not proven by intensity. Sometimes Allah removes sweetness to protect the heart from becoming dependent on sensation. He teaches the heart to stay, even when nothing is felt. This is a deeper form of loyalty. The heart remains in prayer without emotional reward. It remembers Allah without excitement. It stays without demanding reassurance. This stage refines the heart. It learns to love Allah without conditions, not because faith feels good, but because Allah is worthy. Dryness stops being an enemy. It becomes training. Silence becomes meaningful rather than frightening. The heart realizes that Allah is not testing it by withdrawing closeness, but by teaching it to recognize closeness beyond feeling. When the heart releases attachment to how closeness once felt, something stable forms inside. Faith becomes calm instead of dramatic. Worship becomes sincere instead of emotional. The heart no longer chases moments. It learns to live in presence, and in that presence, Allah is not lost. He is known in a quieter, deeper, and more enduring way. Witnessing deepens when the heart releases its need to understand. The heart often struggles not because life is hard, but because it wants answers before it wants surrender. It asks why, how, and what comes next. The mind wants everything to make sense before it feels safe. Ibn ʿArabī points out that this habit belongs to the intellect, not the heart. The heart was not created to solve reality. It was created to trust the one who holds it. When the heart insists on understanding before accepting, it stays restless. Every unanswered question feels like a threat. Every delay feels personal. The heart keeps circling the same thoughts, hoping clarity will bring peace. But peace rarely comes that way. Understanding often arrives later, sometimes much later, and sometimes not at all. As the heart matures, it learns a quieter strength. It begins to rest even when explanations are missing. It accepts that not everything is meant to be clear immediately. This is not weakness, it is trust. The heart learns to stay with Allah even when the path ahead is unclear. It stops demanding reasons as proof of care. At this level, surrender happens first, and meaning follows later. The heart says yes before it knows why. It obeys before it understands. This does not make the heart blind. It makes it steady. Anxiety lessens because the heart is no longer trying to carry what it was never meant to carry. It hands the weight back to Allah. When the heart releases its need to understand, witnessing deepens. The heart becomes calm inside uncertainty. It does not rush life. It allows events to unfold without panic. Over time, understanding may come in pieces, through experience rather than explanation. And even when it does not come, the heart remains at peace, because it has learned that trust is safer than certainty, and closeness to Allah does not depend on having all the answers. The heart sees Allah clearly when identity falls away. The heart often introduces itself before it listens. It carries stories about who it is, what it has been through, how strong it is, or how wounded it feels. Without realizing it, the heart begins to see Allah through these stories. Ibn ʿArabī points to a deeper truth. As long as the heart is busy protecting an identity, its vision remains narrow. Identity creates a center around the self, and whatever sits at the center quietly blocks full witnessing. When the heart defines itself too tightly, everything becomes personal. Trials feel like attacks. Blessings feel like confirmation. Even worship becomes a reflection of the self. How sincere I am, how patient I am, how close I feel. The heart is still present, but it is crowded. Allah's address becomes filtered through self-image. The heart hears only what fits its story. As the heart matures, it begins to loosen its grip on these labels. It stops insisting on being seen as righteous or wounded, strong or broken. It allows these descriptions to pass without clinging to them. This does not erase personality or emotion, but it removes the need to constantly define oneself. The heart becomes quieter, and in that quiet, something opens. When identity softens, the heart becomes receptive instead of defensive. It listens more than it explains. It experiences life without immediately turning it into a personal narrative. This creates space, and in that space, Allah's presence becomes clearer. The heart is no longer asking, "What does this say about me?" It begins to sense, "What is being shown here?" This is where true clarity emerges. The heart no longer competes with Allah for attention. It no longer needs to be the main character in every moment. It allows Allah to be central. When this happens, guidance feels lighter. Trust feels more natural. The heart is not trying to preserve an image, it is simply present. When identity falls away, the heart does not disappear. It becomes transparent. And through that transparency, Allah is seen more clearly, not because He has moved closer, but because the obstacles inside the heart have quietly stepped aside. The heart enters continuous witness when expectation collapses. The heart often waits for Allah without realizing it. It waits for relief, for clarity, for change, for a sign that things are moving in the right direction. This waiting is not always patient. Often, it is filled with expectation. The heart quietly sets conditions. When this happens, then I will feel calm. When that arrives, then I will trust fully. Ibn ʿArabī points out that this kind of expectation keeps the heart in the future, while witnessing can only happen now. As long as the heart is expecting something from Allah, it is not fully present with Him. It is standing at the door of the moment, looking ahead instead of living inside it. This creates restlessness. Even blessings can feel incomplete because the heart is still waiting for the next thing. Peace becomes delayed, always tied to what has not yet arrived. When expectation begins to collapse, something profound changes. The heart stops bargaining with Allah. It no longer says, "If you give me this, I will be grateful," or "Once this pain ends, I will trust." Gratitude becomes immediate. Trust becomes active rather than postponed. The heart learns to accept the moment as it is, without needing it to improve first. This does not mean the heart loses hope or stops making dua. It means hope is no longer mixed with pressure. Dua becomes an act of closeness, not a demand for outcomes. The heart asks, but it does not cling. It hopes, but it does not wait with tension. It rests, even while asking. When expectation collapses, witnessing becomes continuous. The heart begins to notice Allah in ordinary moments, not just in answers to prayer. Peace is no longer delayed. It exists now. The heart is no longer waiting for Allah to arrive through events. It realizes He has already arrived through presence. And once the heart sees this, it stops living in anticipation and begins living in trust. The heart remains with Allah when it accepts being unknown. There is a quiet desire inside the heart to be seen, understood, and acknowledged. Even when the heart turns toward Allah, this desire often follows along silently. It wants its patience to be noticed, its pain to be validated, its faith to be recognized. When this need remains hidden, it shapes how the heart moves. The heart may worship sincerely, but part of it is still waiting for confirmation that its effort matters. This is where one of the deepest tests appears. The heart is invited into a space where no one sees what it carries. Its struggle is private. Its growth is unnoticed. Its sincerity is not affirmed by people, results, or recognition. At first, this feels heavy. The heart wonders if its efforts are wasted, if its silence means it has been forgotten. But this moment is not loss. It is refinement. When the heart begins to accept being unknown, something loosens inside. It stops checking for approval. It stops explaining itself. It no longer needs to be understood in order to remain steady. The heart learns to exist without witnesses except Allah. This is not isolation, it is intimacy. The heart discovers that being unseen by creation does not mean being unseen by the Creator. As this acceptance deepens, the heart becomes lighter. It no longer carries the pressure of performance. Faith is no longer shaped by how it appears, but by how it is lived. The heart is not trying to prove devotion through visibility. It is simply being devoted. This removes a subtle form of anxiety that many hearts carry without realizing it, the fear that unseen effort has no value. In this space, sincerity grows quietly. The heart begins to act without expecting return. It gives without keeping count. It endures without seeking applause. Pain is carried without announcement. Joy is held without display. This does not harden the heart. It softens it. Because nothing is being performed, everything becomes real. Accepting being unknown also protects the heart. Praise no longer inflates it. Criticism no longer wounds it deeply. The heart is not built on people's reactions, so it is not shaken by them. It becomes steady, not because life is gentle, but because its foundation is hidden and strong. When the heart fully accepts this state, something beautiful happens. Allah becomes enough. His knowing replaces every other form of recognition. The heart no longer asks who sees it, who understands it, or who appreciates it. It rests in the certainty that Allah sees every intention, every struggle, and every quiet act of sincerity. In this resting, witnessing becomes clearer. The heart is no longer distracted by how it appears in the world. It is fully present with Allah. Being unknown stops feeling like absence and begins to feel like protection. The heart understands that some of the deepest closeness is meant to be private, and in that privacy, the heart remains with Allah unmoved, unexposed, and deeply at peace. The heart becomes unbroken witness when life itself becomes remembrance. At a certain depth, the heart no longer separates remembering Allah from living life. Before this, remembrance feels like something added on to the day: prayer times, words repeated, moments carved out for focus. But when the heart matures, something shifts. Life itself begins to speak of Allah. Work, rest, loss, love, delay, routine, all of it becomes a place where Allah is recognized. Remembrance is no longer an activity. It becomes the atmosphere the heart lives inside. This happens when the heart stops dividing reality into spiritual moments and ordinary moments. Early on, the heart feels closest to Allah in stillness and worship, and farther during responsibility, stress, or distraction. But as awareness deepens, the heart realizes that Allah is not confined to quiet spaces. He is present in movement, pressure, and repetition just as much as in silence. When the heart accepts this, it stops leaving Allah to live life. It begins living life with Him. At this stage, the heart does not need to constantly remind itself to remember Allah. It notices Him naturally. A delay becomes a lesson in patience. A loss becomes a reminder of what truly remains. A blessing becomes an invitation to gratitude rather than attachment. Even routine tasks carry meaning because the heart sees them as part of a larger order, not as interruptions to faith. This does not mean the heart is always emotionally calm or spiritually elevated. Life still brings fatigue, frustration, and sorrow. But these experiences no longer pull the heart away from Allah. They draw it closer. The heart learns to recognize Allah not only in peace, but in endurance, not only in answers, but in waiting, not only in clarity, but in perseverance. When life itself becomes remembrance, the heart becomes unbroken. Nothing feels outside of Allah's presence. There is no need to switch between worlds. The heart does not say, "Now I am spiritual," and "Now I am not." Everything is held within one awareness. This gives the heart great stability. It is not shaken easily because it is no longer relying on specific conditions to feel close to Allah. In this state, remembrance is quiet and steady. It is not dramatic. It does not demand attention. It shows itself in patience during difficulty, humility during ease, and trust during uncertainty. The heart is not trying to hold on to Allah through effort. It is allowing Allah to be recognized through everything. This is what makes the heart an unbroken witness. Not that it never struggles, but that nothing pulls it into forgetfulness. Even when the heart is tired, it knows who it belongs to. Even when life feels heavy, it knows who is carrying it. Allah is no longer something the heart turns toward. He is the one through whom the heart understands everything else. When the heart lives this way, remembrance is no longer practiced in moments. It is lived in existence. And once remembrance becomes life itself, the heart does not lose Allah because it no longer lives anywhere else. In the end, the heart is not asked to become extraordinary. It is asked to become honest. When all the layers fall away, seeking, fear, ownership, expectation, identity, what remains is a heart that simply stays. It stays with Allah in clarity and in confusion, in fullness and in loss, in movement and in stillness. This staying is not effort, it is arrival. A heart like this does not claim perfection. It still feels pain, it still tires, it still lives inside time. But it no longer lives in separation. Nothing can pull Allah out of it, because the heart is no longer trying to hold Him. It has learned that Allah was never something to be grasped, only something to be recognized. This is the heart that witnesses without interruption, not because life stops changing, but because the heart stops leaving. It understands that every moment was already filled, every path already watched, every breath already known. What once felt like distance is now understood as misperception. What once felt like searching is now understood as forgetting. When the heart rests here, it no longer asks where Allah is. It asks only how clearly it is seeing. And even that question slowly fades. What remains is a quiet certainty, deeper than emotion and stronger than thought. Allah was present before the heart began seeking, and He will remain after the heart stops trying to understand. This is the end of the journey and the beginning of witnessing. Not a heart that found Allah, but a heart that finally stopped losing Him.